All right. We're back. Thanks for riding with us this morning. I appreciate your attendance. And I jump on here and I can see some folks from all over the country. I got folks in Baton Rouge, New York, Brunswick. Not quite sure where Brunswick is. I see folks over there in Seattle and down in Miami. Don't get scared if I say where I know you are. It just pulls out your IP address and tells me where it is. I can't say anything about you. I'm not the NSA. And they already know where you go. So don't waste your time being fearful. See folks down in Texas, New Mexico, California. You know, there's been a lot of talk about this Obamacare thing and the issues surrounding it and what we should, be doing in reference to it. Well, I've been telling you about the security lapses that are here, but it's even worse than that. There was a hearing the other day in which Henry Chow, he works for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. He's the Deputy Chief Information Officer. His last name is spelled C-H-A-O. I think he should add an S to that and call himself Henry Chaos, because when you hear this guy's testimony, and this is about a 5-minute video, but I want you to hear it because it's pretty indicative of what's going on. The last couple of minutes, from about halfway on, it sets the stage, the first half, but the last half is pretty stunning. What he says is that actually only 30 to 40% of the information technology system that's been needed to gather all the information is actually only about 60 to 70% of that has been built. But worse yet, there's 60 to 70% of it that has not been built. And that's the part that really matters, which is, from their perspective, which is the ability for them to actually handle the online applications, the back office parts, right? This is the accounting systems, the payment systems. So I draw this analogy for you. This is like, you opening up, you being charged with opening a store. And the owner of the store has come to you and said, listen, I'm going to open this brand new store. I'm going to spend a boatload of money getting this thing together, and I'm putting you in charge of the project. And you have no idea what you're doing. And the day for the opening of the store arrives, and the store is in a shambles. There's scaffolds all over the place. The walls haven't been painted. There's no displays. There's no product to even sell. There's no cash registers. You've hired 50 salespeople to wander the store and help the people find what they need. You've spent literally all of the money on advertising, and you have gotten such a great result to that advertising that when you look out the door, the lines outside the door are thousands of people deep, waiting to storm through the door and buy the goods that don't exist. And the owner walks in and he says, how can we be ready? There's no product. The walls aren't finished. There's spackle all over the floor. There's no cash registers. Who are all these people milling about in suits? Well, those are the salespeople. To sell what? Obamacare is going to collapse under its own weight. You ever been to a circus? You ever been to a circus and you see an elephant? And at some point, they roll out this big round thing and they get the elephant to step up on it and he throws his trunk in the air. And then at another point, they get the elephant to sit back down on this thing. And the amount of weight that elephant bears and that round disc must be very, very strong to bear the weight of that elephant. Well, we have a government that is trying to bear the weight of an elephant on a standard kitchen chair. And the chair isn't made to bear that weight. And it's crumbling. This government has become so top-heavy that at this point, all it can do and all it will do to retain its authority and its power, which is growing in literally leaps and bounds by the day, is it will now begin to oppress you as you rise up against it. The tide has turned. The tables have completely reversed their position. The polarity of the magnet has changed. The master is now the slave. And the slave has become the master. You can do your part to help bring this thing down, to help weaken that chair. And I suggest to you that it will expose this big government for the overbloated, overweight, behemoth, tyrannical monster that it is. There's a poll out this morning that 90% of Americans want Obamacare either repealed or rewritten. Only 12%, even of Democrats, want it left alone in the condition it's in. 12% are willing to say, let's just wait a little bit longer and make it work out. That means, ladies and gentlemen, 88% say, nope, something's wrong here. Well, the stunning news that this thing isn't even been built will blow your mind. I want you to listen to this. This is about 4 minutes, but it's a worthwhile listen.
Solutions that may be possible in light of the healthcare.gov debacle. Have you had any conversations about changes you can make to healthcare.gov to assist the insurance industry?
I think part of the strategy, I haven't spoken to issuers myself or been part of those meetings, but I think that as part of the strategy under Jeff Zients is to improve the experience of consumers, but that involves key third parties that are also key to this equation of getting enrolled, and those are agents and brokers, and working with issuers to fix certain aspects of the systems to make it work better.
So have you had any discussions then about providing insurance companies with the ability to directly enroll, or anybody in your agency department?
We had designed something called direct enrollment into healthcare.gov, or part of that FFM system architecture to accommodate that.
And so that's ready. That feature has been turned on, or it has not been turned on?
It was not working well initially, like many other things, but we have been performing fixes and optimizing it and working with issuers to get direct enrollment up.
So have you had any discussions about giving insurers direct access to information on eligibility for subsidies?
Only in terms of the result. There is a series of security
yes.
handoffs. Right?
That's a yes, then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Going back to the question, the feature on the website, will that happen in the future then, to that question? Discussions about giving insurers direct access to information on eligibility for subsidies, do you believe that will happen in the future?
What he's talking about here, folks, is that you have to log in order and give all of your information before they'll let you see what the price is. I mean, if you went to that store I analogized before, and you said, I want to come into this store and I want to shop. And they said, well, that's fine, but first you have to tell us, first you have to prove who you are, show us your identification, and show us your tax returns so that we know that you're qualified to buy here. And then you can't see what we have for sale or what the price is going to be until after you have given us all of your personal information. What would you say to that store owner?
It's not really direct access. It's more of a handoff, a secure handoff in which they've collected enough information about the applicant and their, or an agent and broker, and this person has given authorization for consent to work with them as a third party.
So that's a yes then again as well?
It's not access direct to eligibility data. It is a more involved process that protects the person's information.
But they'll be getting the information. Insurance company will be getting the subsidy access.
They don't get to calculate it. That is a marketplace function.
But they'll have information on eligibility for the subsidies. Direct access.
Only as a result of the marketplace handling that data, not touching that eligibility data themselves.
When the committee's been reviewing materials, it indicates that some parts of healthcare.gov were not completed before the launch, as we've discussed here. What portion or
Here it comes.
percentage of the website remained to be created when you launched on October 1st?
I don't have an exact percentage. I think some of previous conversations when people ask about whether things were complete, I look at it in terms of overall marketplace systems.
So you've never talked about what's complete, what's not complete, whether it's how much to go?
I think there was a set of priority functions that needed to be in place. Like, for example, you had to authenticate an individual. That's a key function that had to.
Well, how much do we have to build today still? I mean, what do we need to build? 50%, 40%, 30%?
I think it's just an approximation. We're probably sitting somewhere between 60 and 70% because we still have to build the system.
60 or 70% that needs to be built still?
Because we still have to build the payment systems to make payments to issuers in January.
Let me get this correct.
Are you listening to this? There is still 60 to 70% that has to be built. And here we are on November 20th, fully 7 weeks into this debacle, 3.5 years after it began, and we find out that 60 to 70% of this thing still has to be built.
Correct. 60 to 70% of healthcare.gov still needs to be built.
It's not really healthcare.gov. It's the federally facilitated marketplace.
But the entire system that the American people are being required to rely upon,
that part is
70%.
Healthcare.gov, the online application, verification, determination, plan, compare, getting enrolled, generating an enrollment transaction, that's 100% there. What I'm talking
about the entire system is 60 to 70% away from being complete.
Yeah, there's the back office systems, the accounting systems, the payment systems. They still need to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent $200 million on this, only on the development of the website. We have spent literally tens of billions of dollars marketing it and advertising it, pumping up the American people with it, lying to them to get them to agree, misrepresenting the truth, because there's an article in the New York Times this morning where a woman says, my mother submitted an application, and they didn't even ask. They just threw her straight into Medicaid. Well, for the record, if you don't know this, when you participate in Medicaid, they have a lien on all of your assets going forward. Did you know that? Has anybody told you that in the media? Has anybody from government even mentioned that dangerous little tidbit of information? Well, the equity in your home is no longer yours once you're under Medicaid. Neither is the property that you have that you own, your automobiles. Neither is your whatever savings accounts you may have in the bank. All of that now is subject to being confiscated because you have been subsidized under Medicaid. Ladies and gentlemen, the level of abuse and tyranny and treason that is being perpetrated on Americans here right now by the likes of everyone in this administration and everyone in the entire body of Congress and every judge on a federal level calls for drastic American action in a massive, peaceful, civil disobedient uprising that says we have had enough. And we are not requesting it. We are demanding a wholesale resignation from every member of government. Now, in order to accomplish that, and I'm right along the line with General Vallely here, in order to accomplish that, one thing has to be done first. And I'm actually writing to General Vallely about this. An organization needs to have a pre-qualified, pre-vetted entity of individuals who have stepped up to the plate and said, yes, I will step into the role as senator from this state or congressman from that state. I will step into the role as a temporary federal judge. I will step into the role as president or vice president. I will step into the role as an assistant to the president under a cabinet. I will step into the role as the administrator of this administrative agency until we can shut it down, freeze it, and lock it down, and then dispose of it. Why? Because government, like nature, abhors a vacuum. And we cannot go in there and demand their resignations without a pre-built, preconceived, waiting in the bat wings replacement government that can step in on an interim emergency measure. But each of those people must sign. First of all, they have to be qualified, found and qualified and interviewed and vetted. And when we know that, they don't have a problem that can derail the process, or that they are really there under false pretense, then they must sign a contract. And this is the accountability contract. The accountability contract says, one, that I'm there for a short period of time until we can hold regular generalized elections again, that I recognize that my role here is temporary, that I will adhere to the term limits that are prescribed, and I will not overrun that time, nor will I re-sign up to be replaced or to run again and to be an incumbent. Thirdly, that I will do the duties I've outlined, and those outlined duties have to be the repeal of the 17th Amendment, the return of our monetary and our fiscal policy to the Treasury and taken away from the Federal Reserve, that they will eliminate the Federal Reserve, that all agencies are frozen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've got a whole list of them. But more importantly, here's the most important part. At the bottom of this contract that he's going to sign with the American people, and it's a unilateral contract, he's declaring, these are the commitments I make in order to attain this office on a temporary basis after we have forced the resignation of those in power. I am hereby stating that as liquidated damages, I am pre-signing my resignation document, and in the event that I fail to adhere to any of the qualifications or stipulations that I've agreed to in this contract, all that is required of my accountability partners is that they date the letter and submit it. Do you get the idea? If his accountability partners, and every member will have accountability partners, if they refuse or recognize that that person has been corrupted, has changed since they've been there, has now refusing to adhere to their committed, their agreed upon terms, then all they have to do, the accountability partners, is date the pre-signed resignation letter and submit it to all media outlets and say, so-and-so has resigned. They have not done their job as they committed to do. That's an accountability factor that puts us back in the driver's seat. I'm going to talk more about this over the course of the next week or two, because I think that this is a methodology that allows us to gain or regain control. And I can tell you this, there's really only, at this point, two methodologies that this future of our nation can take. One, we are going to either civilly, massively, peacefully disrupt what's going on, put a broomstick in the spokes of the tyranny that is being fostered upon us, and we're going to do it peacefully, or we're going to wait until it reaches a point where we can no longer accomplish that task in a peaceful manner. And at that point, we may not even have an opportunity for success. I'd like you to think about this concept of an accountability contract. I've actually got an acronym for it. I'm working on it, and I'm working on writing it up. But I want you to think about it because it truly has the ability to put us back in the driver's seat. Imagine if my own home state, Claire McCaskill, our current senator in the federal side, a Democrat, when they tried to pass Obamacare back in 2010, 72% of the state of Missouri said, we don't want it, and yet Claire voted for it anyway. Now, assuming for argument's sake that there was an accountability partnership and accountability partners that had been appointed to work with Claire, and that committee of accountability partners said, listen, this is not what the state's asked for. 72% of our citizenry said we don't want that. And so we're going to pull her letter of resignation, pre-signed and undated, and we're going to fill in the date, and she's hereby terminated. Do you understand the power of an accountability team behind every elected representative? In fact, I would encourage you, as I've said before, to run for office. And I don't care whether it's for city council, dog catcher, whether it's for county commissioner, whether it's for a state representative, whether it's for lieutenant governor. I don't care whether it's for the president or the federal House or the federal Senate. You should surround yourself with an accountability committee. These are people who say, we understand, and they cannot be all of your ideological sycophants. They've got to be independent people who will say, you have breached your commitment. And we hold in our hand your pre-signed, pre-executed resignation letter. And if you don't do the right thing in this office that you have promised and you have violated, if you violate the oath that you have given to the people that you represent, we merely have to put a date on the paper and submit it. And your contract states as liquidated damages, you would agree in advance. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a level of accountability never before seen or heard of in the United States of America. And it doesn't take a constitutional amendment to get term limits. You see, the beautiful part of this is it enables an individual, because you can waive your right willingly in a contract. You can say, listen, I waive my right to my privacy. You're doing it when you sign up for Obamacare. And as a politician running for office, you can say, I waive my right to be able to say, I can run again. A self-imposed contracted term limit. Now that's a totally different story. Imagine having the ability to walk in front of a crowd as you make your campaign stump speech and say, here is my accountability contract. I have pre-signed this, and it says I will do the following. And if at any point in time I violate that, my liquidated damages clause here in this contract states that you don't have to ask me to resign. You don't have to wait for me to resign. You don't have to impeach me to get me out. All you've got to do is put in a date and submit it. I'd like your feedback, your ideas, your opinions on that. I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email at mike@americasvoicenow.org. It's called the Political Contract. And it is, for all intents and purposes, the future of what we as a collective group can do once we have had an opportunity to force these individuals out of positions of authority as a massive, peaceful, civil disobedience measure, a civil, peaceful uprising to demand, to get resignation by demand, then we have a way to put accountability back into the position of government. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host here. Please find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. I'd like your feedback on this particular topic in this segment or any other one that we did this morning. You're certainly welcome to email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Even if you're not a Facebook user, you can still visit the website and see all the links and stuff that we put up there. Follow all the stories. You can't comment. If you are a Facebook user, please hit the like button because that helps us to spread the word and increase our circle of influence by incorporating your circle of influence. And sometimes something we post may just trigger a great opportunity for you to open up a line of discussion with your own personal circle of influence. You can also visit our YouTube channel where we post every show that we do on both a podcast for audio only and video. You can find those both by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks very much for joining us. God bless you. Remember that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is when good men do nothing.